Yeah. So, yeah, so you guys share and Adam, I'll pass. Okay. All right. Greetings. Nice to see you here and welcome people that are streaming as well. So I'm Paige Morse. I'm with Aspen Technology, and we're a company that does software for decarbonization. And we're particularly focused on the process industries and power systems as well. So today we're going to talk about a powerful new capability in the tech sector that's really making a difference in the sustainability space. And we've got a great panel here to share the stories. So artificial intelligence offers significant opportunities to improve sustainability performance, but it can also present some challenges. New capabilities are already improving efficiency, flexibility, reliability of operations, especially in the heavy industries. So today we're going to talk about some successes and some emerging opportunities to apply AI in a variety of sustainability areas. And we're going to share some specific stories as well. So I'll let the panel introduce themselves and I'll just pass this along. So Adam, why don't you get us started?
Fabulous. Good afternoon, everyone. It's late in the day on a Friday, so appreciate you being here and to those online. Are we doing just intros or a example as well?
So an intro and then do kind of a favorite AI story, something new that you want to talk about.
Fantastic. Well, at Google, we're really excited about the opportunity for AI in the climate space. We actually did some work just before COP last year, and we identified that, and we did this with BCG, and we identified that existing AI solutions, if scaled, have the opportunity to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by up to 10% by 2030. And that's not insignificant. That's the same as the emissions as the European Union. And it has significant opportunities in topics like climate adaptation and resiliency, as well as sort of breakthrough climate modeling and research. So I'll just give you one example that I'm really excited about, which is our work with the aviation sector. So if you've ever seen the thin white clouds behind an aircraft, those are called contrails. They actually account for a third of the emissions from flying. So after fuel, it's the next biggest thing. And we've been using geospatial data and AI to help predict when contrails will occur. And we tested this in the real world with American Airlines, and we were able to reduce contrails by 54%. And we're now testing this with aviation sector around the world, including in Europe. So just one example of how AI can have a real impact today.
Michelle, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, hello, and thank you for having me on this panel. I'm Michelle Patron, and I am General Manager for Sustainability Policy at Microsoft. And I know today we're going to focus mostly on energy and industry, but I did want to share an amazing example of how AI is being used, which is relevant to the COP conference, which we are at today. So as we know, climate risks place huge risks and place a huge challenge for populations around the world. Getting access to information and early warnings about when weather events are going to happen is absolutely critical. So here we've been working with our partners to share progress that we've been making on new population models that help countries better understand where populations are, and new understanding of the risks from extreme flooding and extreme heat, to be able to really help pre-position supplies to those in need, and to get the early warning systems alerts to those populations so that they know that these things are happening, and to be able to better adapt to the climate risks that we can't avoid.
Yeah, that's great, thanks. Go ahead, Mike.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Train. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for Emerson. We're a global automation company, pretty focused on the industrial type of use cases and applications. I want to give you a little more of a humorous AI story. About 3 weeks ago, our SEC lawyers sent a podcast to me that was about our sustainability report. And it was glowing and charming, two people talking, and got pretty much all the facts right, and kind of went on for about 15 minutes. And I was flabbergasted, so I started searching the internet frantically to find this podcast. I wanted to share it. I wanted to figure out who got intrigued by our sustainability report. turns out that our SEC lawyer reads the Wall Street Journal. He referenced one of Adam's products. What is it called? Notebook LM product. He had sent our sustainability report in, and bang, out of that came an AI-generated podcast about my sustainability report. I didn't know it I didn't have the pretext of that when he sent it to me. Kind of felt a little miserable afterwards when finding out, but really an incredible technology.
That's a great story. So now thinking about industrial automation, tell me more about, say, examples in that space where AI is getting used, where Emerson's focused.
Yeah, I would say lots of different use cases, right? I think, again, we touch chemicals and life sciences and power generation and oil and gas and metals and mining and factory automation, all the other spaces. The potential for AI is to really drive farther, let's say, our ability to be more efficient in energy management, more efficient with our materials that we utilize. I think it's going to be at the forefront of a lot of optimization that's going to help contribute positively to the sustainability of all kinds of different companies and industries that are out there. We use it in-house, both inside of our products, but also inside of some of our own tools. One of the things we've done for 20 plus years is we are frequently asked to come in and help modernize a quite dated control system. Sometimes it's our own, but a lot of times it's legacy of other companies' product lines. And it used to take quite the engineering effort to pour through, because you had to the plant changes, there's updates to the plant all the time. You had to take a snapshot of now in the plant and then do the engineering to take it from the old system and coding and sets to the new system, generally our system, coding and sets, etc. But because we'd built up a pretty large library of the work of modernizing these systems, we were able to turn it into an AI tool that could get 85 to 90% of the codes shifted over. And then it took a little bit of a cleanup, a little bit of a supervisory activity at the end, but cutting a lot of time out, which ultimately creates the opportunity for it to be cheaper for the customer and be able to get a better ROI on the investment.
That's a great internal example. Yeah. It's great. Another story to offer, Adam? I know you had several examples of good use cases as well.
I've got many examples, and my friends at Microsoft will have as well, which is really exciting because we do think there's so many use cases. We've identified 3 big areas for where AI can really help in terms of information, optimization, and prediction. I'll just give you a brief one for each. So in terms of information and thinking about the sort of industrial space, one of the hot topics here at COP is the issue of methane, very serious issue. We've been partnering with the Environmental Defense Fund to launch a new satellite called MethaneSat, which will travel around the world and using Google Cloud's capability and AI will spot methane leaks at a much granular ability than has been done in the past. We are then using Google Maps technology to sort of map them, all of the oil and gas infrastructure, in the same way we do with Google Maps, and making that information available. Now, that will be available to governments and countries, to NGOs, but importantly to those companies as well, who have regulation that's driving that and have their own goals that they've set. So they're really interested in it as well. So that's sort of one example. In terms of optimization, I'll just take a slightly different angle. We're working with cities to help with traffic junctions. So if you get stopped at a red light, it's quite frustrating, but it's actually bad for the environment as well. And stop-start traffic is 29 times worse from an emissions perspective than free-flowing traffic. And we're using AI to look at the traffic flows and give cities minor changes to those traffic junctions. It may be 1 or 2 seconds to increase free-flowing traffic, and that's reduced start-stop traffic by 30% and emissions by 10%. Final example I'll give, and I'll just actually build on the sort of the adaptation early warnings work, because a lot of us are working in the flood forecasting space. It's an area we've been working on for some time, and we've built an advanced hydrological AI model, which we take with local data as well. And this week we've just announced that we've extended that to 100 countries around the world, covers 700 million plus people. You can find it yourself if you want to Google Flood Hub. What's really exciting now with the technology is it's so good now, we're able to deploy it in parts of the world where data is really scarce, often those parts of the world who are most impacted by climate change. So we're really excited about the opportunity. Important for us, we think about how do we make sure everyone can benefit from this technology, not just big companies and those countries, richer companies?
I'll build on what Adam has shared. And at Microsoft, we also break this into three, we call them superpowers, but additional skills that AI can provide us. The first, especially when it comes to sustainability, energy, and climate, the first is really understanding and predicting complex systems. The second is new sustainability solutions. And the third is empowering the workforce. Let me give you an example in each. And building on the idea of we need to optimize legacy systems. As electricity demand around the world is growing and we're bringing more variable resources onto the grid, both in terms of renewables that don't put the same amount of supply on the grid and demand that pulls at the same time, we need new grid capacity. But it can take a lot of time to build new transmission lines. And so using AI to understand where there are available corridors on existing transmission lines can really accelerate the ability to bring new clean energy sources online. We're working with a partner called Line Vision that does just that. An example of that is they put this to work with National Grid in the UK, and they identified enough capacity to bring online a new 600 megawatt of offshore wind without needing new transmission. The second example relates to sustainability solutions. Earlier this year, Microsoft partnered with one of the US national energy labs, the Pacific Northwest National Lab. Using AI and high-performing compute, we looked at the available 32 million potential compounds to create a new battery technology. In 80 hours, they were able to take 32 million compounds and whittle it down to just a dozen to try and find a new potential material that would use 70% less lithium than the current battery. This is something that would take years. Typically, you would try something in the lab, note down what would happen, and then tweak your experiment a little bit. But that's what AI can allow us to do. It can really turbocharge scientific discoveries. The last has to do with empowering the workforce, and this can happen in a lot of different ways. I want to give you an example of how it can help when applying for a new project and permitting. Often permitting can take 5 to 7 years if it's a new energy project, a nuclear project, a transmission line. And that also involves the application process, which itself can take quite a number of years in trying to put all of the data together that is needed. We worked with the NRC and several utilities to develop an AI that could apply to nuclear application process. So you get the parameters for the application, you can pull data from other applications where you have applied for a similar permit, and then the environmental data that is available, whether it's weather data, land data, data about the wildlife that is existing nearby, can be pulled from other sources automatically by giving the parameters of where the location of the project will be. And that can be easily adjusted to any country. We've done it now for nuclear, we're now looking at offshore wind. So that really helps energy companies, it helps regulators in doing their job better and in shrinking the time that it will take for us to bring some of these projects online.
Yeah, that's great. Mike, do you want to go too, or?
Why don't you go?
Oh,
You've got some
okay.
great
Well, yeah,
some
thank
great
you.
examples.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking you made a comment about workforce. One of the things because we operate in the process industries, one of the challenges is as there's turnover in workforce, you want to be sure that people are skilled and able to run things. So we have the capability to take information from previous operations and give advice to the new operators so they make good decisions about how to proceed. And that's a big deal in industries, heavy industries right now that are trying to be more efficient, but we still need them to operate, and of course we need them to be safe. So getting this advice through previous operations is very helpful to these new operators. So I think a critical factor as we move forward. Let me offer or ask a question though. We've talked about some interesting new systems, but sometimes there's challenges in people trusting AI. They're concerned about the data. Tell me a little bit about how you're addressing that, what some of the concerns and issues. Mike, I don't know if you want to get started.
Yeah, I can do that. We serve some pretty conservative industries. There's safety at risk and hazardous locations and that kind of thing. So I think we're still in a phase of getting people comfortable with AI being in the middle of some of that. Domain knowledge, of course, is exceptionally important. You just don't throw a few algorithms at something and go have fun. So I think, we're trying to be responsible in the way we bring it to the marketplace, the way we describe it, to make sure that we don't get a tissue rejection, because if you have a kind of a failure along the way, it'll take forever to rebuild that trust going forward. So I think we're being careful and cautious in terms of how we go forward. But it is creating new opportunities to optimize in different ways. We used to have everything, like a control system might span one facility. You do a lot of optimization on the facility. With AI now and kind of the broader ability to ingest and manage data, we can look at 5 facilities as one facility, and they can be disparate in different places, but yet treat that as one type of asset now and kind of do different optimizations on that. I think that piece is what some of the companies we serve are really excited about, that they'll be able to kind of view and, maybe granularize and then kind of view their businesses in different ways than they would have in the past.
That's good. I think I want to add one thing on this too. One of the ways that we're managing AI and how it's best used, it's embedded in our products because we're a software producer, but we look at it through a specific lens to the industries that we're working in. We actually use the term industrial AI. And the idea is when you start to use the AI, you do it within a confined, but place basically with guardrails to say what's relevant in this situation. Because I think we all know you can do the wild chat GPT that takes you far, far away, uses a lot of energy in the process. But if you instead make sure that the question is addressed within the framework of the process industries, considering things like safety and the basic physics and chemistry of what you're dealing with, it makes it a much more distinct question and therefore a valuable answer. And I think that's an important way that we're addressing this as well. How about, Michelle, you want to go ahead? Yep.
Sure. Responsible AI is at the foundation
Yeah.
of where Microsoft starts. And even before we rolled out any product and that we roll out any product in the future, it starts with responsible AI. So we have an internal standard which goes to trustworthiness, which goes to secure, which goes to responsibility, and every single software or any single product has to meet all of those pieces before it is rolled out to the public. And now we are working with different governments around the world to embed those principles into their regulations to make sure that the same is true for everyone.
You raised the importance of dialogue in developing that. Adam.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think, building what Michelle was saying, I think, there's a lot of excitement around AI, but AI is not new. If you were using Google Search 5 or 6 years ago or Google Maps, you were using AI. Now, there's been significant advancements and there's lots of opportunity here, but, companies like us have been working on the sort of responsible principles for AI for many years. I think, though, I'm focused on AI in the sustainability space, and we do a lot of work in AI at large. But I think, and just building on your point about AI uses lots of energy, it's the first question I get, which is, great, you've got all these use cases, but what about the negative impacts of AI? And I think it's an important topic, but I also think it's important to put this in perspective. So the first thing to say is, according to the IEA's latest data, data centers account for about 1.3% of the world's electricity use. And in their highest forecast to 2030, data centers will still be a minority portion of the world's electricity. And AI is a fraction of that. So it's not insignificant, and it will be growing. No one knows exactly what it's going to grow, but I think it's important to put it in perspective. The second thing I would say is, in terms of who are the largest buyers of clean energy on the planet, it's Amazon, Microsoft, Google. We've all been investing in for a long time, and we're all very focused on the efficiency of the models, the chipsets, every aspect of it. So alongside the opportunity that AI can bring in the climate space, Google and I would argue our friends are also very focused on this as well. So I always want to put this in perspective. I don't want to dismiss it, but I do worry about some of the headlines I see that just don't bear reality.
If I could just jump in here, and I think with the way to frame it as well is that it's small, it's growing, and we know that it's growing, and so that's important to us. It's important to the local communities where we operate, but it's growing in a context that so many other demand drivers for electricity are growing, so we need to be part of the conversations. We are committed to continuing to drive carbon-free electricity, to make these efficiency improvements, to look into our supply chain, especially for the communities where we operate. And this is an area where there's a lot of cooperation. They tend to, some tend to look at tech and think that we compete on everything. And this is where there's just so much work, and with our partners and with our customers, that we're doing so much together because we need to all be driving to this energy transition.
Yeah, because I want to comment on the negative stories. It would be unfortunate if we lost this huge opportunity to apply AI to sustainability, because it's, in my view and in our experience, it rapidly accelerates the progress. Like you're bringing up, you look at huge amounts of data to make the decision. For many of our customers, they're looking at very broad data sets to make an analysis, and it could be maybe subsurface. You're trying to figure out where I can best sequester carbon. Well, looking at the subsurface data, there's so much to work from, but AI lets you work with that much more quickly, come up with a better answer. It's really critical for us making progress in this space. So, kind of related, we're all talking about, Mike, did you want to go? I don't want to know. Okay, all right. Related, all of this relies on data, and data quality is a concern. So maybe what are some thoughts and maybe tools that you're using to be sure that your data set is good and therefore your answers are good? Mike, did you want to go?
I think we're fortunate. We have kind of a very finite set of data that we manage and deal with in terms of a customer's operational activities, generally bounded by where they are, what they're doing. So we haven't had as much challenge in that space. But if you kind of zoom back out, I take my CSO job and what we're trying to do in our own facilities and our own footprint. Then you start running into disparate systems all over the world, disparate data sets, gaps in our data. So data quality in that context for me and what I have to help do is a big challenge. And we're trying to work our way through that. We've got to bring people along in the discussion so they understand how to get ready for this. Right now it feels like we're doing a lot of chasing, and people get frustrated by that chasing part of the activity. But again, trying to build fluency, it'll take a couple years. We'll get everybody there. We will fill in a lot of data set that we're missing, even on our own components that we buy and those kinds of things. But I think this is very much data first, maybe, and then AI second, if you really want to put things in the right context.
Yeah, I agree. It relies on the data, so.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we're all really excited about AI. We also need to remember AI is not going to be the answer to everything, and it's certainly not the silver bullet to solving climate change. I think it's going to be a really important tool in the toolbox alongside many other things. Look, I think there are data challenges. I think AI can help find those data challenges fairly quickly, and I also think in many cases AI can help fill in the data challenges. But to sort of Mike's point, I think one of the big challenges we see is the lack of the sort of data needed to really put some of these solutions in place. So we spend a long time actually talking to governments, and we've worked with others across the industry to sort of put out lists of here are the big data sets that are missing, and we do this with, again, NGOs and researchers and scientists, because actually if we can unlock some of this data, data that doesn't have IP or needs to be private, unlock some of this data, then many of these solutions that we've spoken about will move faster and actually will unlock a whole wave of new solutions. So I think it's important that we have the right data, and again, AI systems can actually do some of that quality checking as well.
I would just add that as Microsoft works with our customers through their digital transformation to bring them onto cloud or to bring them onto AI, data is first. So it's the governance of the data to make sure that it's accurate, it's accessible. AI, especially all of these more language-oriented AI, but AI in general can help clean up the data, and we're seeing that in some of the work that Emerson and Microsoft are doing together on ESG reporting tools that can put all of the data together from enterprise, from different sources that come in, and help connect disparate data points into these sets that companies are going to need as they're reporting in these upcoming regulations, if it's CSRD or in other places, and then also ask natural language questions into the data so that different parts of the company that may not be tech experts or may not be sustainability experts are able to both access and work on the data as well as help in the reporting.
I don't want to sort of sit here and throw out hundreds of examples, but I think sometimes examples that you can actually go and play with yourself are helpful. And we've been working with the UN on the SDGs because the UN recognized they had all of this data and they wanted to track progress on the SDGs, but it was across all of the UN. And the UN's like Google and Microsoft, we're not easy to navigate. And they've used one of our products called Data Commons. So if you look up SDG Data Commons, it's a large language model. You can just ask questions of it yourself. You can ask, what's happening with climate change and migration in Africa, or any of these sorts of questions. And it's now drawing together and bringing together these disparate data sets right across the UN. They're using that to track the SDGs, but you can also use it to ask questions that you might be interested in as well. So again, I'd just like to give some use cases you can actually go and play with yourself and see if you think it's helpful.
And educate yourself, right? You get to learn about what the issues are going through that and therefore get a concise, useful answer to that. Yeah, that's great. I don't want to miss a chance to hear from the audience. Do we have questions out here? Anyone want to participate? Hannah, as you jump up looking for the mic, right? Anyone? Here we go.
Thank you for this discussion. I think when we talk about AI, we also, and it was mentioned about the energy demand and the renewables, etc. But you can also think of it as, building a service sector by design. And by design, I mean that, when you get the software developers working, they may be only thinking of, getting as much data as possible, and that's not part of their preoccupation. And I think when designing a system, we need to also start thinking about that, because otherwise we will have again a this is exponential demand. And even if we go over to renewables, it is, it's something to worry about. All this demand, the new demand in energy, renewables, but also materials and everything that goes with it. So if the panel would like to comment on this aspect.
I'll make a comment first, actually. I mean, so in the extent of, you can waste a lot of energy and spend a lot of time. One of the things I raised earlier was about industrial AI. It's more about asking the question within the context of what you're working on. And it helps to frame the question and make for a more efficient search effectively. That's one way, although I'll comment to another big energy area that we're working in is that, the heat generation of data centers. We all hear about this. Well, we're actually working to build models to effectively do heat integration, so you can pull the heat out of the data center, but then use it in the community nearby. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and this is now being done in several places. We should do more of that, and in truth, data centers part of their design should be, how do we use the heat somewhere else? That makes a lot of sense. But others, Michelle. Yeah.
Thank you. You're spot on, and I think that there are quite a number of levers that we have to reduce the demand inside the data center and in the code. What data you run it on is going to be important. The efficiencies of the servers. Talked about heating. Cooling is also really important. Instead of cooling the entire data center, can you do direct to chip cooling that can keep them use less energy, but also keep the chips from burning out so quickly during the model? We said AI has been around for a long time. Generative AI has not. These are very early days. There is a lot that we are learning in the days and the months that go by to really improve efficiency. And I do hearken back to about 15 years ago. And if you looked in the archives and you saw the headlines about cloud computing when it was first being really rolled out at scale, you saw discussions of a hockey stick in electricity demand and a real fear, at least in the United States, that this was going to drive and turbocharge fossil fuel plants coming online. And that didn't materialize. And part of the reason was because there was a huge improvement in efficiencies in those different levers and in other levers inside the data center, inside the code, that I think resulted in something about an 850% increase in compute over the 10 years, between 2010 and 2020. against a 10% increase in electricity demand for all data centers. So it's a really important lever, and we think it's going to be an important lever in AI as generative AI continues to grow.
And you'd be surprised if I disagree with any of that, but yes, +1. And I think we're all looking at every layer of the stack, from, as I say, the energy use to how we build our data centers, to the chipsets that go into process these tensor processing units, through to the models themselves, how we train the models. And we've got tried and tested models that have been, reduced the energy use by 100 times and the emissions by 1,000 times. So it's every layer of the stack. Now, I care about this, and many of my colleagues care about it because we care about sustainability and the planet. Let's be clear, there's a huge commercial reason why we need to be efficient, use as less energy as possible. So there's a really good business reason to do this beyond sustainability.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay. I want to add one additional thing too that I think we didn't get into for use cases. Maintenance is a big issue with existing equipment, and even now in renewables. And so one really interesting use of AI that we've begun to do more and more of is to look at windmill farms and to think about how to make them as reliable as possible. Well, you want to make sure you're doing the maintenance in the best way, and you can use AI to look at its operational data to see when the maintenance is necessary. And then you plan for it, and you take outages when it doesn't disrupt critical generation time. So it's a very practical application, but it's fundamental because it impacts people's view of renewables and their reliability overall. So I think it's a critical area. So I just wanted to mention that. Oh, great. Michelle. Yeah.
So actually, in preparation for this panel, I reached out to some of my energy sector colleagues within Microsoft, and I wanted to give you some real-world use cases of how that's helping some of our customers. So, for example, Siemens is using AI for predictive maintenance, and that has reduced downtime in some of its factories by 15%. GE is using AI. This is in its turbine development processes, and that has also reduced defect rates, which have also improved productivity. So those are just a few examples of exactly. It tends to be the less shiny parts of how AI is helping. But if you don't have the infrastructure, and you don't have the infrastructure that works, and you don't have the infrastructure that is less costly and the infrastructure that is more efficient, then it's going to just end up costing what all we're trying to do.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, one interesting use case that we're also seeing right now is, we used to have a world where the molecules were over here and the electrons were over there, and they didn't come near each other. Now we have the use case, because renewable energy is kind of going to be at the heart of everything, that, we're now trying to optimize based on weather, real-time electricity pricing rates, these other new factors now, and where a facility can choose to operate, choose not to operate, choose to make a bubble or a molecule, or sell the electron back to the grid. We've got day-night things, we've got storage, batteries. How do you optimize using the batteries so they're filling in at the right places and points in time? So I think AI is actually enabling some use cases that we probably wouldn't have gotten to or been capable of because of the complexity of it. We're able to now kind of bring those into the equation and do some pretty interesting things.
Complexity. This is what's driving us there, right? Is because as we do the energy transition, it is so complex, all the moving parts, while we still need to use existing energy. And so managing all of that AI is perfectly set up for that, I think. Any other questions from the audience? Or here we okay. It's okay.
Hello? Yes. So since the floor is open, on the use case, I wonder if you are aware of applications already ongoing for building the circular economy. Tomorrow there will be a joint declaration on circular economy, and I see that AI is perhaps a must in that, and there are some studies saying that perhaps circular economy can contribute 40% of what we need to achieve when it comes to the pledges of efficiency and in the economy. So if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, plenty of examples, and I think we've focused a lot on climate and energy, but right across from nature and biodiversity to circularity. One of the areas we're working on is a product called CircularNet, which is a free open source AI model that we've put out there, which is designed for material recycling facilities, and it uses AI and vision to sort plastic and other materials in a much more advanced way than has been done in the past. And we've open sourced this, and we're working with different industries around the world, different recycling facilities around the world who are testing it. So lots of examples, and you can Google it, and you'll find other examples. But yeah, I think just one example, but right across the sustainability agenda, I think there are opportunities.
I'll add one as well. Is another aspect of recycling. There's of course mechanical recycling, but also advanced recycling, which is chemically a very difficult process. And people often model this, and again, AI gives you a tool to go even deeper in your modeling to figure out the system, because the challenge when you do plastics recycling, for example, is it's waste. So it's not a reliable routine feedstock, and that creates huge issues in your system. And this is true for mechanical as well, but particularly in chemical recycling. And so going deeper in the models using AI, it has been so helpful to improve that. We still have a lot of work to do. I don't want to say we've got it solved, but it's definitely helping us make much greater progress to build the circular system for plastics, as an example. Okay, I think we're done. Oops, no, we've got another question over there. Yep.
Thinking about the workforce development aspect of this, and with the new LinkedIn jobs report that just recently came out, and I think one of the statistics I saw was that by 2030, 1 in 5 jobs will be missing the green skills that are necessary to fill that job. With AI continuing to grow, and specifically generative AI continuing to become so much more popular, how can we create more green jobs in a way that's like helpful for different areas, and especially communities thinking about where these data centers are, and how can we build the skills that are necessary for AI to help this transition?
Yes, and thank you for citing the LinkedIn report. I mean, there's so much intersection when it comes to digital skills and sustainability skills, and it's going to be at that intersection that a lot of the needs are going to be. So it's both gaining the sustainability skills, but also being able to upskill in AI. And I know all of our companies are trying within our own workforce and within our partners to create opportunities for that onboarding. I also want to point out in that report, and another important trend that is happening is that there is a gender gap in skills development. And so what you're seeing is that I think only 10% of women have at least one sustainability skill that would qualify, to be able to access these jobs, whereas I think it's 17% of men. So both men and women, you've seen that increase, but the gap is widening in between that as well. And so as we think about making sure we're upskilling the workforce for sustainability and for digital, we also need to make sure that we're closing the gender gap on those skills.
Yeah, no, a plus one to that. And I think, again, back to my earlier point about making sure everyone has these skills right around the world. And there's a lot of work we're doing and others are doing in terms of free training courses so people can upskill themselves. And the exciting thing here, and the important thing is in the sustainability space, is we want every job to be a climate job, every job to be a sustainability job, not the sustainability team. And so how do we empower everyone in the business with these new skills, both in terms of climate and sustainability and AI, so they have more opportunity to take action within the function and the area of expertise that they really have.
Related comment, we work a lot with universities to get the students taught these important points, because for many years, Aspen Tech's capabilities have been part of chemical engineering programs. We're in 1,300 universities using our tools, but it's on more traditional things. Now we need to teach them how to use these tools for hydrogen, for example. Just 2 weeks ago, I was part of a group that worked with Vanderbilt University talking about how do you do hydrogen, not normally part of the curriculum, but we need to get them thinking that way. And then we've started some training for people who are later in their careers. Again, they're engineers, they've been in the industry, but they don't know anything about carbon capture, for example, or the circular economy. So we offer courses to them to kind of get the basics within the context of what they already know in their engineering field, because it's so important that, yes, everyone's going to be doing sustainability, and we've got to get all of them involved. So, yep.
And so there are specialized jobs which are very specific to sustainability or to the AI. And then you have, adding a few more examples, procurement, right? You were a procurement officer before, and now you're being asked to do a sustainability screen or a circularity screen on what you buy. You are a controller, and now instead of dealing with financial data, need to deal with ESG data as well. And even on our campus, you are someone that works in the catering service, and you worked on a traditional stove before, and now you're being asked to prepare on an electric stove. So there's so many different aspects of how you layer in those skills, and some of them are skilled within the company, but that's just not a sustainable, no pun intended, but a growth strategy to be able to really skill everyone who's going to need it.
That's great. All right, I think winding down, maybe I want to say to the panel, is there one point that you were dying to say today and you haven't had the chance yet? I don't want to have you miss the opportunity, because I know we all do prep and then you think, oh, I never got to say that. So is there?
I think there's one more question.
Oh, is there even? No?
Okay.
Are we okay? All right, okay. But any a parting message then, if there wasn't the one thing, but there's a parting message that you want to leave with the audience on this, Adam?
No, I think it just sort of summing up what I said earlier, which is I think AI has a really exciting opportunity to help accelerate the work in climate change and sustainability more broadly. It is not the solution to everything, but I think it's a really exciting tool. And if you're not already thinking about it, go and look at the work we've put out there, Microsoft, others. Look at the use cases. Come and talk to us. Talk to other people. Figure out where it can help you accelerate your efforts in this space.
I would say try it yourself. Just go on in any type of chat that is out there and figure out, play around, because that's how we all get more comfortable, and then allow your creativity and your ambition to then figure out how you can use it for your own work and for others.
Yeah, I would echo those things, and I think I'll come back to the talent question and talent options. I think we got to do a lot to educate the public, educate potential employees coming into our fields. We need to attract a lot more people to these spaces, because we're just going to need a higher quantity of talent that's familiar and able to use these tools, and then deploy them through all the industries, all the activities of the economy, and keep that people thing first, I think, as we go forward.
Okay, great. I want to thank the panel. I really appreciate your insight. And I think I'll leave you with the message of the complexity of the energy transition means we've got to be using AI. It's a critical tool to help us get through this and make it in time, because we are late. So, all right. Thank you all of you for joining us today, online and in the room. Thank